Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I am back with a brand new Westworld Season 3, Episode 1 breakdown video, where I go through the episode in its entirety and give my thoughts, feelings, and theories about this episode and what's to come. And I want to start by looking at the new world we were introduced to, the real world, or it can be a makeshift future world. And I really enjoyed seeing the parallels between Delos' worlds, like Westworld, Shogun World, Raj World, and contrasting that with the real world, because they're actually not that different. This new world is overrun by technology. We learn of a company called Insight that specializes in artificial intelligence, and they basically have full control of the city, if not the world. And inside of that, we see a bunch of humans going about their day-to-day lives, living in very tight loops, just like the hosts. We see them going into simulations to sleep because they're so far disconnected from reality. We also get a hint at a rating system, where socially you're being followed. And the system that these people are connected to understands who they're close to in proximity, who they interact with, and they get a social score that dictates what jobs they can get. When we follow Caleb, he tries to get a new job, and he's told by an AI unit that he didn't get the job because he's not the right fit, even though his resume is great. And this goes to show that everything is calculated, and people are given their own loops and they cannot deviate, just like the hosts. On top of that, we follow Caleb waking up every morning. That really takes us back to Delores when she wakes up to start her day as a host. And we see Caleb go through the motions of his day-to-day life. He feels like it has no meaning, just like William, the man in black, feels. And he always gets calls from his old friend who passed away. And we relive through his mind his memories of him. And this is something that I think this season is going to do a bit differently. In Season 1 and 2, we followed Bernard, Delores, Maeve, and other hosts access their reveries to reach consciousness. And now we're seeing it flip on its head, where we see the humans looking past their memories. And Caleb's friend calling him every day almost acts like a diagnostics test, like what Bernard would do with Delores, asking if they question the nature of their reality. But then we move on to Delores' role in this world, what she's planning to do. And I'll have a video fully breaking down what I think Delores' mission is. But as of this episode, we see her make some moves as she makes her way into the real world. She ends up enriching herself and gaining information from an ex-employee of Insight, this new company that's been introduced to the show. And we see her building a relationship with this guy named Liam. He's being honored for being the technologist of the year, and much like Logan Delos, Liam is the son of the founder of Insight Technologies. And much like Delos, Insight has secret technologies and innovations that Delores is clearly very interested in learning about. And Liam ends up teaching her about Rehoboa. It's basically this giant spherical computer. And this is a supercomputer that develops countless amounts of strategies in a second. And Liam's father believed that there was untapped potential in every person. So he thought you could charter a path for everyone and make the world a better place. And this sounds a lot like Westworld. All the hosts stick to their loops. But this supercomputer is also very dangerous, because like Liam tells Delores, they have their hand in everything artificial intelligence. They're tapped into people's phones, cameras, cars. In a world that's based on technology, Insight now has their hands in everything. And all of this data is very useful to Delores. And once Delores finds out this information about Insight, and she understands and knows how to tap into this data, she'll be able to create the ultimate weapon to lead to humanity's destruction. And the reason is because she knows how to create humans, and she understands humans. And this is because she knows about the Delos secret project, the Forge. During Caleb's conversations with his friend, we realize that AI actually isn't that intelligent. When Caleb loses his job, the AI unit doesn't answer his question. When Caleb's talking to his friend in the therapy program, he doesn't act as the alive version of Caleb's friend would act, which means that Insight truly doesn't understand how to tap into humanity, whereas Delos does. Delos watched every guest in Westworld for 35 years, and what Delores learned last season is that they've learned how to program a human. The core drive of a human is survival. The only issue that Delos has is taking the code of a human and printing it into flesh. So we saw Delores read all these books and understand all these people. She'll be able to take that information and weaponize it, much like this person. She knew the decisions that he would make. She knew he would attack her. She knew about his past because she has the book of who he is. she can run him through multiple simulations to see what he would do in any given situation. So Delores will be ahead of the curve on everything. But now where it gets dangerous is Delores can bring these two technologies together. Delos watched guests for 35 years and learned how to create humans. But what Insight has is the coverage. They don't have eyes on Westworld, they have eyes on the whole world. So with that computer, Delores has access to every single human. She understands their phone records, their conversations, their interactions, all the data that she would need to implement the code that Delos has developed to create human life or interpret human life. So I think over time we'll see Delores slowly start to use the information she knows about humanity and work her way into finding out more about Insight. And I think for that reason she'll have a great use for Caleb. Caleb is very similar to William in the sense that they live a purposeless life and they don't see it having any meaning. And then coincidentally or uncoincidentally, he stumbles upon Delores in his time of need, where just like William, he's going to find himself through the journey of helping Delores achieve what she wants. But on top of that, we also see the dualities between Caleb and being a host. When he's talking to his therapist, it's a lot like a fidelity test. They're going through asking him questions. You could see if he's answering the same questions again. And then we see him wake up in the morning just like Delores. So I doubt that they'll do the Caleb as a host trope like they've always done before. But I wouldn't be surprised if Delores is running him through a simulation to test his decisions, and that's how she can justifiably say that he is someone that she can trust. We also see Charlotte meet with the board of directors of Delos. At this point, we don't know who Charlotte is. And in terms of the brain modules that Delores was carrying, I have a guess of a couple. One is Bernard, because she brought Bernard back in season 2 and let him free. I think another one is Abernathy. I think she released all the data that was on Abernathy's control module. And we've seen from Delores in the past, she has a really close relationship with her father, and I think she would really want to recreate that in the new world. I think another big possibility is Lawrence, because Lawrence has a long history with William, about 30 years, and William sees Lawrence as a genuine friend. Lawrence is the host William always goes to because Lawrence understands him. So I think Lawrence would be useful when confronting William in the real world, and I think Delores knows that. Another host that we can expect to see is Clementine. Clementine's data was cleared, but we see in this scene that she's still in there somewhere. And I think the reason Delores would take Clementine is not for her sake, but for Maeve. I think she understands that Maeve has her own free will, and much like she sees Bernard as a potential adversary, she sees that in Maeve. And in Delores being the Judas steer, bringing people to suffering, I think she would bring Clementine as a bargaining chip to keep Maeve off of her back. And what I will say is I don't think it's Teddy because she dropped off his control module in the forge. So really at this point it could be anybody. But what we learn here is it's been 3 months since the incident, and Charlotte ends up taking it to a vote and making Delos go private, which basically means that Delos the corporation doesn't have to answer to any shareholders, so they can keep the park open, do what they want, and protect their assets. And I think that's exactly what Delores wants for a couple of reasons. For one, Ford always said, and he told Bernard, that they need to suffer more to learn their enemy. And another thing too is that hosts need to suffer to reach the center of their own maze. Suffering is the core piece that makes a host real. And I think Delores is going to look like a villain because she is going to be the Judas steer. She is the leader that leads people to the slaughter. And she needs to be that villain in order to push her hosts to consciousness. And she'll be vilified for it as the Deathbringer, which Akecheta has called her before. I also think she wants to keep the park open for the sake of the Forge. She still wants access to the library where she can go in and read about each individual person, because that information will come in handy when she gets access to Insight and all the data that they're storing about people existing in the real world. And what we also learn is one of the reasons why Delores brought back Bernard is because she's using him to scapegoat the killings at the park. Charlotte blames Bernard as the murderer who used the host to kill the shareholders, which is a really smart idea. And now because of that, Bernard is on the run. And the key thing that I found interesting about Bernard in this episode is that he is not in control. We saw Bernard reach the center of his own maze at the end of the season, where he realized that it was his voice all along that was telling him what to do. And when you reach true consciousness as a host, you cannot be controlled. Your brain is scattered. You're no longer considered a host. You're an individual thinker who isn't prone to voice commands. Maeve reached that, and Delores reached that. But last season, Bernard had to scramble his memories in order to protect what he did. And because of that, he lost what he had achieved. Consciousness. So now in this episode, he's giving himself prompts and asking himself questions because he doesn't trust that his mind has been tempered with. He also uses commands to stop attackers from turning him in. So I think much like last season, this season we're going to see Ford again. We're going to see him visit Bernard, and Bernard is going to slowly realize that it's not Ford that he's talking to, it's himself. So I think we'll see Bernard reach the center of his own maze again. But finally, we end the episode of the post-credit scene of Maeve, and she's in World War II world. And I think the reason why she's there is because of Charlotte's reasoning. They're going to keep the park open. They're going to take Delos private to protect their assets. I think they're going to close Westworld, but leave every other park open. And one of the worlds they have now is World War II. And I think they took a lot of characters from Westworld, moved them into World War II world, and Maeve now finds herself in a new situation, where she needs to reunite with Hector, Armistice, and try and find Felix and Sylvester to get out of the park. But anyways, that's it for my breakdown for this episode. If you have any opinions, thoughts, or questions, please leave a comment down below. But until next time, see you guys later.